Hey guys, welcome to CraigerCoClassic. Today I'm going to talk about installing universal brake boosters onto your Classic of any or whatever kind. It is universal, so it will require some modifications, which I will talk about later on. Now the reason I'm going universal and new, or rather is because it's new, brake boosters is because I feel, out of my experience anyway, the old reman stuff just doesn't seem to work as well, probably because it's been remanufactured too many times. So I like going new one. It's also because you can get a chrome one or whatever, it's nicer. There are different variations of new universal brake boosters. Now all the ones I have, I believe, are 7-inch in regards to the diameter, but I believe they come in 8 and 9. You can get all this stuff on eBay or wherever. This right here is a dual diaphragm brake booster. I'd say that's recommended for trucks, especially if you plan on doing hauling, towing, and maybe if you race it or something. And then you have single. They both come in chrome and zinc. This one right here I'd recommend probably for more cars. I think your trucks can do just fine with it. It is new technology, new old technology, so it can definitely keep up for sure. As for modifications, I'll start with the front here. Right here is your essentially brake rod bolt. And this goes on the MC side. So this right here, that bolt is 7 millimeters. In this situation right here, you'll need a wrench to hold the bottom bolt. I'll show you a picture, and so you can extend it. And the purpose is you're extending out this bolt. The reason for that is that on your master cylinder, obviously recommended to buy one that's made for a booster, but if your rod removes, it's fine. It can be done. You measure the depth inside here of how far it goes in, and from there you extend this out to meet up with it. And the reason for that is that I wanted a quick brake reaction time, obviously, so I wanted to extend the bolt out to match up with the depth of the MC. But in some cases that bolt won't go far enough out, and if that's the case, I took the bolt out of the brake booster, went to a local hardware store or whatever, and got one. You can tell the difference right there. That was longer. I got different variations of lengths, so I could adjust it, and then I measured it to the depth of my master cylinder. And then you take that nut, this one right here is a nut, and this one requires, I think it's 8 millimeter, or I think even a 5/16 will work for the bottom bolt, and then this top little bolt, which this right here was actually, I found that, so that was easier for me to do. But on the originals, it's 7 millimeters. From there, I also want to mention modification number 2, right here. So some Dodges, some Chevys, on these new universal brake boosters, have a wider bolt. So you're going to have to, in regards to mounting, you're going to have to widen your bolt holes, and that's where the drills come in. That's another part you need for sure. And then drilling it out. And then that goes on to the brake booster and all of that. Then it's not really modification, but right here is your universal brake rod and clevis, and so you can find these on eBay as well. Essentially, you're going to have your brake booster bracket, and they come in universal. I'll show a picture, and they also come in whatever comes on your vehicle. For Chevys, they tend to have a tilt. Dodges are depending, and Fords are usually straight on from there. And this clevis right here is very cool. I'll show you quickly. When you remove your original setup or whatever, even if it's manual, it'll probably be something similar to this, but you'll have a bolt. And what will replace that is, you can do a bolt if you want to, but I like this right here, and it comes with the kit. And essentially, you put your brake rod in, it goes in, and then you have a pin to close it, to keep it shut, to solidify it. But essentially, your previous hole will line up just fine on there. But with that being said, I've installed these on a 64 F100, on my 68, and I've also now I'm using 66 F100, which any series I think, it doesn't really matter, but brake pedal. So it fit fine. In regards to the clevis going to your previous hole in your brake pedal on the 66 pedals, on my 68 pedals, but on my 64 pedals, I felt, I guess I didn't have to, but it was giving, see how that moves? It was giving too much of a harsh angle. So I drilled into my, I took my brake rod out and I drilled into this and moved the hole so that it would be less, you know, binding. And then also when you're in there, it also depends on the depth of bracket you have, but you can adjust, hence universal, or adjusted brake rod, the depth of it. For example, a lot of our classic cars have really large, like long pedal travel. Well, I wanted to lessen that down just so that I won't have to, you know, I have more responsive brakes as well. So you can do that, and I adjusted this down. Some of you might have to, you know, cut some of this bolt off, stuff like that. Nothing huge, nothing, you know, whatever, but so also I'd like to mention, I don't know, you can't see it, but I have the original to 1968 brake power booster brackets, and the bolt holes, shocker, on the rear of these universal brake boosters are larger, so I had to widen those as well. And I will show a picture of the universal brake booster brackets, and those on my 64 anyway, I had to drill new holes for those as well. I can't remember if it was on the brake booster side and the firewall side. That's fine. At least on Fords from 64 to 68, you don't have to reinforce your firewall, but it is recommended. That's probably a good idea yeah, when installing and stuff like that. So don't really have many measurements for it because everything's universal on it for sure. The tools you will need for the front bolts on the front part of the brake booster, I used 14 millimeter. For the rear bolts to the booster bracket, I used 13 millimeter. I had to adjust and sort of loosen the rear bolts on this Ford that mount to the firewall. That was 9/16. And the bolts on the adjustable brake are 1/2 inch and 9/16. This will vary probably, I mean, I don't think it'll vary on the universal brake booster. It might vary on your brackets as well. Alrighty guys, obviously start removing the master cylinder. These two bolts on whatever setup you've got, probably original or whatever, I don't know the measurements. So whatever setup you have, loosen that as well. You do not have to loosen your brake lines, but I would find a way to support your master cylinder. This one's on the light side and my brake lines are new, so I'm really probably not going to do anything about that. But yes, remove your front two bolts, which I already loosened up prior. Pull it off, find a support, obviously remove your vacuum line, and then of course remove the rear ones. You also want to go inside and remove essentially your brake rod to your brake pedal. They're probably a bolt on original setup, and other than that it would probably be a different setup, which I'll show you next. After removing your 4 bolts in the back, and the bolts and or clevis that you have with your cotter pin or whatever pin that you have holding it on there, if you have a universal setup, remove and pull obviously. It'll be tight for sure. Alright, I did my pre-measurements for my master cylinder for this bolt. I also did some pre-measurements off of my brake pedal for the adjustable brake rod. And essentially you just trial fit until it gets where you want it to. See these brake booster brackets? When I bolted them onto the firewall, they sort of widened out a bit. So I had to loosen one side to put it narrow enough to put this in. That's one of the many little things you might run into when installing a universal setup on your vehicle. After that you'll have responsive brakes that work. These brake boosters, in my experience, work better or best for all drum setups. They work great with disc as well, but something about that brake booster and, you know, with drum brakes works pretty good for sure. I think that's it, guys, and thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel where I'll be posting more videos like this, reviews, and tech tips.
and let's keep this American steel on the road.